Good morning. Very happy to be here this morning. Thank you, Carol. So I'm really excited to just talk a little bit about automation and take a step back from where we are in the industry and some of the things I think that we should all be focused on. So with that, I'll start first with a little bit about the digital disruption that I think is happening within our industry. And it's interesting, if you read this data, for example, from IMD, where they say that 40% of incumbent players in our market today are not going to be here within the next 3 years. It's a bit of a scary thought that so many of the companies, if you look around, that are next to you aren't going to be there. And look at all of the disruptions that have happened around us. It's a real call to action for all of us to say maybe we have to look at doing things a different way from the way that we do them today. I'll give a couple of examples. And, you know, if you look at education, this is one that we can all see. Education has changed so much, and the way that students learn, the way that students create is so different than it used to be in the past. If you look at schooling being so much completely digitized and getting more and more digitized. The other example I thought I'd show is just banking. And this one is really phenomenal to me because I look at what's happening, especially in countries like if you look at all of the retail market, 95% of retail in Sweden is cashless. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know that Denmark has made an announcement that they want to go all cashless. You look at ATM machines being taken out by the thousands. It's phenomenal to see this transformation when we thought going to ATM machines was a phenomenal transformation. So it's this constant change that we have to embrace as well. And driving, you know, we're hearing more and more about where driving's going. Are we even going to have cars, self-driving cars, car services? Look at the way we shop. It's continuously changing. So you get the picture, right? Our whole world around us is constantly changing due to digitization, which means we, in the service provider industry, are at the forefront of that, right? Where's all the data going through? It's going through our networks, which means we have to run and think about our business in a different way as well. So moving kind of to our side and looking at our networks, I mean, the beautiful thing is, if you look at the data, our networks are constantly growing. What great business for us to be in, where every year there's growth and growth and growth. So that's the good news. The bad news is we have to constantly think about how to run those networks a different way. The revenue generation isn't growing at the same rate that our network bandwidth is growing, so we have to be more creative. And that kind of leads us to the automation topic, because it's automation that's going to answer the way that we grow and run our networks. Keep looking up to look at the slides, and I see me. It's really awkward always to see yourself when you look. I'm like, I don't want to see that. So if we look at kind of what's happening, on our network side, the big driver, everybody wants to talk about 5G. And, I think 5G is great, but it's really, to me, just a wonderful excuse to talk about we have a whole bunch of bandwidth coming, we have a whole bunch of change coming, so we need to do a whole bunch of things, right? We need to work on low latency, we have to design networks a different way, we have to look at mobile edge compute and say how much has to be how close, and so it's a great way for us to look at architectural enhancements and change. And, the things for us that are driving mobile edge compute are very real, right? We see these coming, even at Cisco, where we, are looking at, we're such a big player in collaboration, we're looking at collaboration in very different ways, with virtual reality, with augmented reality. Very cool things are going to happen there, but we as a service provider community have to be ready for that. If I look at just our mobile backhaul, we've seen a 200% growth in mobile backhaul. I mean, the traffic explosion and how we have to think of managing that is again, very, very real. So this is kind of an oversimplified way of what I think we have to do. We have to just become faster. We have to become more efficient. We have to do ruthless simplification of our networking, and we have to focus on growth. We focus a lot on our networks and sometimes at the expense of the others. And I think that it's really time for us to holistically look at these three items, of course, with security around all of them. And if I look at what we have to leverage along the way, we have some great tools, right? We have, what's happened with software-defined networking, what's happened with the use of cloud, and we're just continuing that, which is where do we put the clouds? How close do we put the clouds? And how do they all talk to each other? How do you move workloads? Technologies like ICN, really good stuff, but we have to keep leveraging our cloud story. Programmability and automation, which is what I really want to talk a little bit more about, and certainly orchestration and virtualization. So I'm just going to talk about all of those just a little bit more, because you're probably somewhere on this journey, and this journey isn't one goes after the other. It's really all the tools that we have to use. And I certainly hope that through all the sessions here, through all the opportunities out there from so many of the vendor and technology and open source community, we have really great tools to do all of these. We have got to simplify our networks, right? The thought of going into our networks and using command line interfaces and managing a box is dead. We don't manage boxes, we manage networks. And I'll talk about model-driven networking in a little bit. Disaggregation and virtualization. There's a lot of talk about disaggregation, a lot of talk about white box. There's value in doing things many different ways. And on the Cisco side, we're happy to play in that environment, whichever way makes most sense to the market. But certainly, certain areas of taking pieces of software that used to be in a box and moving those outside of the box into a higher level control plane and looking at a network more holistically, super valuable to all of us. And simplification of services and how we grow services and being able to implement a service on a network as opposed to implementing service as a standalone, really, really important for all of us. So I think that there's many different components, all the way up to APM, right, that allow us to look at scalability and looking at a forward movement of networking in a very different way. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of a tough topic here. Somebody laughed. That was for me, I'm sure. I think it was out in the hallway. I'm just kidding. But look, we are involved in so many standards organizations. We are involved in so many open source associations. We will play with everybody in all the sandboxes, right? So everybody we at Cisco work with, this is the best open standard, this is the best open standard, this is the best open standard. Sometimes, to be just really straightforward about it, we feel there's so many open standards. Are they really open, or are they proprietary because there's so many of them? And every time we have to do the same work 4 times, it means that we could have used all of that energy moving something forward to the market. So I will say I have no religion over which one's best or which approach is best. I think all of my colleagues in the industry would probably agree. Is it that much different to do it this way or that way? But the faster we can agree to how to move the industry forward, the faster we'll all innovate forward. We spent $2 billion on open cloud architectures at Cisco. $2 billion. It's a lot of money, and it's a lot of time for many different possibilities of how to get there. So the one thing that I would say is the more we can unify, the more we can innovate. And this is something I think that's been talked about several times throughout these sessions here too. So I just wanted to just spend a moment on the way that Cisco looks at the service provider industry. We kind of have 4 areas of going to market for service provider. We do the top 2, which is all about networking, and we do the bottom 2, which is all about growth, getting back to those 3 categories we talked about. So mass scale networking, most people know of us as that. We will continue to drive a great networking, hardware, optical, routing, pick your favorite networking component business. But the big one is the green one, which is automation, because mass scale networking is nothing without automation, and it's an entire pillar of our company. We think that the future of networking is all in automation. And then B2C and B2B services, we think that we really have to again, focus on growth, and we can, and so many of the things that we do from collaboration tools, access points, cloud-based security solutions, et cetera, that are good enterprise solutions for service providers. So when I talk about automation, I'm not talking about hardware, I'm not talking about software, not talking about an ASIC. It's all building blocks, all the way into getting deep data down into an ASIC level and bringing that up into being able to use that in an analytical way. What I'll say also is that this is something unique to every implementation, right? If I can build an automation system that automates these beautiful components that I bring to market, it's not enough. It has to bring other vendors' components to market and has to automate those too. Automation is all about artificial intelligence. It's about being able to cross-correlate what's happening on the firewall, what's happening on the optical link, what's happening on the router, and being able to make intelligent decisions. And we have to think of the fact that we're going to self-driving networks. And so, again, it's something that I think in general we need to just all pay attention to, which is it's not a world of individual box management, NMS systems. It's a matter of this holistic system and building platforms for cross-correlation. So this kind of depicts this holistic circle, right? We always think, what are you doing to automate this box? What can I get out of whatever, SNMP and data out of a box? Very meaningless unless you look at the entire circle. And I'll start with the applications one on top, because if I can take my application intelligence to get my quality of experience for my consumer, and I can tie that in with my network intelligence, and I can use analytics in my whole circle of the entire experience for my customers, there's nothing more valuable in building a real automation self-driving network that takes all of that data into account. And that's why it's so important. If you look at the fact that you're going to automate your network, it's not something that you can buy off the shelf from anybody. There's a massive service component to build that unique customization to your applications and your experiences. So, you know, I sometimes look at it like you throw this rock in a pond and all the ripples go out. And if you were to throw a rock in the pond of automation, you look kind of in the center of this, and you have a few companies, these Webscale companies, that have been really aggressive and really vocal on what automation means to them. And what they've done is they've taken their networks and they've said, 100% automated, the box doesn't mean anything. You look at traditional service provider and we're saying the box means everything. I want ISSU, massive fault tolerance, every backup failure plan that I can have, and all of that needs to be in every box. So we have, as an industry, tended to be very box heavy and very fault tolerant on every component in our network. And you look at some of the web players and they've said none of that matters, it's all one level up and it's all very much on an automation level. Something fails, doesn't matter, I'll have something else take it over because I have an external level of control plane. So it's all about being able to move fast, and it's all about being able to have less cost in the network. And when I say less cost, I mean less cost in OpEx. And it's very real. Take a look at some of these numbers. And look, I mean, I get it. Looking at a data center is not the same as looking at an infrastructure company where we manage entire outdoor infrastructures. That's true. But there's something to be learned from what automation can do, and just looking at the data center example as to how many people it takes to manage a data center, and it took to manage a data center by constant innovation and automation, is very real. And I think that likewise, all of our businesses can benefit from that same level of constant improvement in the way that we network and in the way that we have automation manage our networks. An important part to this, I think, is model-driven networking. I know that there's a whole lot of discussion about orchestration here, and it's just something that I have to just kind of put that stamp of approval on. It really is important to say that we're no longer managing individual boxes that have functions. We're managing an entire network as a model. And if you take those boxes and put them into a model, you can take services and you can apply services to your whole network model as opposed to applying services to boxes. It is a very different place that we are today with model-driven control versus kind of the status quo that I have on the left here. And CLI, command line interface, ties into that. You don't want to do anything to a box, even API driven, right? It doesn't matter. You just want to be able to perform functions holistically to your network. So I would say orchestration is maybe step one to the journey of automation. If you haven't done it yet, you should do it. Really, really important, but it just continues to go from there for a different way of monitoring, running, upgrading, launching new services. Really is like the foundational step, I think. And I wanted to talk a little bit about compute, because I think that compute also ties in a little bit with networking. It's such a hot topic, it's such a fun topic, right? We look at where it is that we need to put our compute capability, and where we put tens of boxes, where we put hundreds of boxes, where we put thousands of boxes, exactly how does the communication work, and then even if you figure out the absolute perfect allocation of where mobile edge compute and where deep edge compute goes, then there's what's the logic to get there. And I will say that I think when it came to CDN, which to me is very similar to mobile edge compute, right? It was just video caching. I think we didn't really lead that charge as an industry. I think that charge was led by the CDN providers, and then in the end we just had to support CDN locations and co-locations. But I think for mobile edge compute, we have a real opportunity as an industry to take the lead, figure out where compute goes, and figure out how to use it and what the business rules are to use that compute. So I'll ask all of you to maybe just think about how ready are you? How much have you thought about all these things, right? I think we again, spend a lot of time talking about where we can go. We should all really think, do we have KPIs in our organization that are truly driven and aligned by automation, by orchestration, by how we do our upgrades? What's our culture around it? There's so many aspects to it, and I would invite all of you to just go away and think about, is my organization really ready, or am I just making a lot of reasons as to why I'm not there yet? The other thing that I'll mention is, you can't really move to this new era without moving to a new way of working. It's all about co-development. It's all about agile. I think that if we think we're going to write an RFP and have the perfect answer for multiple years, it's just not the case. We have to think about being constant change and looking at creating an environment of this constant change. I look at Reliance Jio as an example, and it's so fascinating if you haven't talked to somebody. I think Matthew was here. And 100 million customers in 170 days, 7 subscribers being signed up per second. They had to look at an entirely new way of running a business, entirely new way of onboarding customers, of creating tools. Really, really cool to just look at what they've done in the India market and how it is that they've changed. So I have a call to action for all of you. And that is, let's really take a look at automation. Let's figure out what we have to do as an industry together to get there. What are the right open standards, open source components to get us there? If I look at the scale of, for example, where we are with Cisco security, and we see 20-fold more security threats every day than Google sees searches, our scale is phenomenal for where we have to go with networking and tape networking. And I think it's never been a better time to look at how it is that we can automate so much of what we've done in a manual way in order to increase our speed of innovation. So with that, I hope Cisco's a great partner to participate in that with my colleagues in the vendor community, customers, all around. I think we have much to do, and I look forward to the journey. Thank you.